My husband's niece ruined our baby shower gifts because she was jealous. But the truth is much more twisted in the end. Our baby shower was ruined by my husband's niece. She is 14 years old. I am 29 and 32 weeks pregnant with our first child. My husband is very close to his family, so we see them frequently. His niece has always been very attached to him, calling him her favorite person and getting upset if he doesn't immediately give her attention when we visit. She always showed a bit of jealousy, but I didn't think it would escalate to what happened that day. The party was organized by my best friend and my mother. We held it in my parents' backyard because the weather was good. About 40 people attended, including my husband's family. There was food decorations and a large table where people placed gifts. When my husband's niece arrived with her parents, I greeted her. She didn't say much and barely looked at me. She stayed close to my husband, following him everywhere. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it. I was busy greeting guests and thanking them for coming. But an hour later, as we were playing some games, I noticed she was no longer there. My husband went to look for her, thinking she might be in the bathroom. A few minutes later, one of my friends told me there was a problem. She pulled me aside and asked me to go to the gift table. I walked over and almost fainted. Half of the gifts were destroyed. Wrapping paper was torn everywhere. Some boxes were empty with clothes and toys scattered on the floor. A baby blanket my grandmother had knitted was half frayed. A diaper cake my mom had made was crushed. At first I thought maybe a dog or a small child had gotten into the gifts, but then I saw the niece standing there with a plush bunny someone had given me. She looked upset but also defiant. My husband arrived right after me, asked what had happened, and she blurted out that she didn't want the baby to have nice things before she did. She said she didn't want him to forget about her once the baby was born. Her parents came over to calm her, but she was screaming. Everyone was watching. My best friend was visibly angry because she had worked very hard on the decorations. My mom looked like she was about to cry. I told her parents that this was unacceptable and that she needed to leave. Her mother started saying that she was just a child and hadn't done it with bad intentions. I told her that she's no longer a child, she's practically a teenager, and this is something she should understand is very wrong. Her father reluctantly took her to the car while she continued to cry. People tried to help fix the gift table, but some things were broken or irreparably damaged. My grandmother's blanket was lost. The diaper cake couldn't be saved. Items were missing from some gift bags. I couldn't even open most of the gifts with the guests. After everyone left, my husband and I sat in the backyard in silence, surrounded by torn paper and scattered baby items with beer cans in our hands. Well, mine was alcohol-free. I was furious but also hurt. I'd had a difficult pregnancy, and this was one of the few days I had to forget about it. My husband apologized repeatedly, saying he never thought she would do something like that. He said he would talk to his sister and ensure they replaced what had been damaged. The next day, his sister messaged me saying she was sorry for what happened, but also that I had been too harsh for making her daughter leave. She said that jealousy was understandable and that I should have comforted her instead of shaming her in front of everyone. I replied that there is a big difference between being jealous and destroying hundreds of dollars worth of gifts, and that being jealous of her uncle was also a bit unhealthy. After that, she stopped replying. Now my husband's parents are trying to keep the peace. They want us to forget about it and keep the family unity intact, believing their granddaughter has learned her lesson. Unity is fine, but only if her parents do something about their daughter instead of justifying it as if nothing happened. To begin with, I want them to replace the damaged items and for their daughter to apologize to me directly. My husband supports me in this. It's the least we can expect from her and her parents if they truly want to move past this. But if they only want family peace at the expense of my own peace, then they won't get it. Update 1. In the 2 weeks since I first posted, and this update, things with my husband's family have worsened. His sister hasn't spoken to me directly. No calls, no texts, no visits to our house, which is fine, I'm not complaining. The only thing she did was send a short message to my husband saying they wouldn't replace anything that was damaged. Her words were, "The damage is already done and you'll receive many other gifts before the baby is born." There was no apology, and it wasn't even a neutral message. She basically told us to get over it. There has been no apology from her daughter either. She hasn't made any attempt to contact us. Instead, my sister-in-law sent a group message to most of the family saying she was disappointed in us for holding a grudge against a teenager. Well, at least she sees her as a teenager and not a child who needs diapers. But that's all the common sense I can expect from my sister-in-law, as she then wrote that I humiliated her daughter by asking her to leave in front of everyone. She called them a few baby items and said the pregnancy was making me irritable. She might be right, but what's making me irritable now, and especially then, is that she can't discipline her 14-year-old daughter. My husband's parents called me the next day and tried to convince me to let it go. Both times they mentioned it, I replied the same thing. It's not a grudge, it's other people's property and she needs to learn to respect it. Her parents don't see it that way, which is why they haven't done anything to properly educate her, but I wasn't going to let it go. We're not talking about an accident where she tripped, got caught on the tablecloth, and the whole table along with the gifts fell to the floor. This was intentional. She admitted it in front of several people. Pretending it was harmless isn't helping her mature or understand the consequences. Some relatives agree with us but don't say it openly. They don't want to get caught in the middle of the conflict, which I understand, because here I am with a watermelon in my stomach about to give birth to a baby that must weigh 15 kilograms by my estimates of how I feel, and I'm stuck between a gang of entitled people who see nothing wrong with what they did. Some have even told me privately that they believe my sister-in-law is making the situation worse by defending her daughter instead of making amends. So there are people at least within that family who have their common sense intact. I made a list of what was damaged or lost. I also reviewed photos from that day to document it. The total was several $100s in items, and that's not counting the sentimental value of the handmade blanket from my grandmother, which was completely ruined. I had planned to pass that blanket down to future generations. Now I no longer have that option. Every time I think about it, I get angry all over again. My husband has been a great support. He told his sister directly that we expect an apology from her daughter and that they replace the items, that we won't accept anything less. So far, he's been a great husband, but he'd be perfect if he could just carry my pregnancy for a couple of weeks. At least he's already starting to carry his own with so many beers. He has to drink for both of us since eating ice cream doesn't have the same effect as beer for me. So I ask him to drink one more to see if that creates any effect on me, if it at least passes that calm to me. That hasn't been the case. He also told her that we wouldn't allow her daughter near the baby until that happens, and until we see a positive change in her, or at least a positive change in the parents regarding their parenting. That conversation didn't end well. She told him that we were punishing her daughter and wanted her to beg for our approval. They argued for almost an hour and got nowhere. Since then, the boundaries are more than clear. Until there's a genuine apology, his niece will not be at any baby-related events. That includes hospital visits after the birth, birthday celebrations at our house, and any occasion where the focus is the baby. I don't trust her around my son, and I don't trust her parents to take the situation seriously. I told this to my husband, and he agrees, though I know it's a difficult position for him with his family. Replacing the ruined gifts has been a slow process. Some guests have offered to resend things, but I feel uncomfortable accepting them spending more money when it's not their fault. My mom has replaced some essential items. We bought the rest. We've also had to deal with the awkwardness afterward with the guests who were there that day. Several people have asked us what happened when they saw the destroyed gift table. It's embarrassing to have to explain over and over that yes, a 14-year-old did that, and no, her parents haven't demanded an apology from her. Some people try to be kind and say that teenagers can be unpredictable, but even they are surprised to learn that there has been no accountability whatsoever. At this point, I am no longer looking for an apology. I'm not going to text or call again. The line has been drawn. My husband knows where I stand and is backing me up. If his family chooses to remain angry about the consequences instead of the behavior that caused them, that's no longer my problem. Update 2. Some of you have written to tell me that my sister-in-law would probably see her mistake sooner or later, but you don't know my sister-in-law. She doubled down on her attitude. My mother-in-law tried to organize a family meeting at her house. She said she wanted everyone to talk about the issue. I didn't want to go, but my husband said it was better to handle it face-to-face. We went, and it was exactly what I expected. My sister-in-law started by saying that her daughter was still traumatized, that she was just a child, and all of this was too much to handle. For that reason, she shouldn't have to apologize, and maybe I should apologize to her. When she finished, I took out my phone and put the photos on the table. I also had the list of damaged or lost items with their respective prices, which I read aloud. I told her that this was enough to press charges. If we hadn't done it, it was because we were hoping to resolve this privately and not make things more difficult, but she was pushing her luck, and it was going to snap. I told her that the blanket in those photos was handmade by my grandmother and couldn't be replaced, and if we included that in a lawsuit, it would be even more expensive. I told her that if she thought her daughter was traumatized, she should wait until we involved the police, lawyers, courts, and a whole host of law enforcement officials. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my father-in-law said he agreed with me. He said he hadn't seen the photos before and that it was much worse than he thought. A couple of aunts also spoke, saying they were shocked by the damage and understood why I was so upset. My sister-in-law looked furious. She tried to say that everyone was ganging up on her. My husband didn't allow it. He told her that we had been patient for over a month and that all we had asked for was an apology and for the items to be replaced. The meeting ended with my sister-in-law storming out furiously, but 2 days later we received a text message from her daughter. It was short, but it said she was sorry for what she did and that she would try to make up for it. I don't know if it was sincere or if her father forced her to send it, but at least it was something. That same week, packages started arriving at our house: baby clothes, bottles, blankets. Some were exact replacements of the items, others weren't, but they were welcome. My sister-in-law didn't include a note, but I know they came from her because the shipping labels had her name. We are still maintaining our boundary. Her daughter will not be alone with the baby until I am sure she can handle the situation, but I feel that we finally got the rest of the family to understand. Since the meeting, several relatives have approached us to say they support us. Even my father-in-law offered to help replace the blanket by finding someone who could knit one like my grandmother's. It wouldn't be exactly the same, but it's a gesture I appreciate. For me, this is a victory. The damage was acknowledged, the gifts were replaced, and we are no longer the ones who seem unreasonable. Update 3. I didn't plan to post again, but there has been a final development, so this will be a very, very long post that I've had to rewrite many times. Our son was born 2 weeks early, healthy with a strong cry and a good latch for breastfeeding by the second day. I had a difficult labor, then a fever. They kept us in the hospital for 3 nights. We set clear rules before the birth. No visitors except my parents, my husband's parents, and my best friend. No ambushes in the hallways, no surprise visits, no posting the baby's face on social media. Everyone agreed on paper. I didn't expect my sister-in-law to respect any of that in practice. On the second day in the hospital, a nurse told me there was a group in the lobby asking to see us. 4 people. I didn't need names. I knew immediately. I said no and asked my husband to handle it. He went down with a charge nurse. They found his sister, her husband, the niece, and a cousin. The niece had a gift bag and a large folded sign. My husband told me later that the sign had pictures of him with his niece at birthdays and school events with big hearts drawn around each photo. In one corner, she had put a printed selfie of my ultrasound. I didn't see it in person, but it looked quite bizarre. The nurse informed them that we had a no visitors list. The sister tried to argue. Her niece started crying in the lobby. Security arrived. The cousin tried to calm the situation, but it didn't matter. They had to leave. My husband returned 10 minutes later. I kept staring at the bassinet and tried to control my breathing so my stitches wouldn't hurt. The next morning, I asked to be listed as no information. They did it. We also put a note on the door: no visitors without the primary patient's consent. After that, the floor remained quiet. We focused on feedings and my blood pressure. I told my husband there would be no negotiation about the first few weeks at home. He agreed. We were discharged on a Wednesday. My mom had stocked the fridge. My best friend set up a rest station in the living room: postpartum pads, a perineal bottle, nipple balm, and a box of grape juice. There was a handwritten list of feeding times taped to the coffee table. On Saturday morning, a flower shop truck stopped in front of the house. They left a tall bouquet on the porch. There was a small envelope. The card said, "Congratulations from my sister-in-law's family." An hour later, another truck arrived, this time from a bakery, with a box of cake decorated with baby booties. I didn't want an edible reminder of the baby shower. I asked my husband to leave it with a neighbor. He did. On Sunday, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I silenced it and fed my son. After seeing that I had countless messages and calls, my husband called his mother and asked her to close the family group chat. He called again later. He said his sister had posted a long message in the extended family chat. It said I was unforgiving, and that her daughter had already made amends, which was a half-truth. Packages had arrived over the last month, but there was no in-person apology, no direct effort beyond that brief message. Furthermore, we still hadn't seen genuine changes in any of them, and the hospital incident confirmed it. On Monday morning, I received a message from an unknown number. It was my niece's high school counselor. She explained that I had been involved because my niece had started crying in class, saying that her uncle no longer loved her. 3 days later, my husband's father stopped by with groceries. He stayed at the door and asked if he could take out the trash. He told me he had found a local woman who knits for babies in the neonatal intensive care unit. He had asked her if she could try to replicate my grandmother's blanket pattern from photos. She said she could try. That same afternoon, a box arrived with a frame inside. It was a family tree chart. My husband was in the center. The branches led to his niece in bright colors. I took a picture of it and sent it to my husband with a short message: "This is not normal." He agreed. He called his sister and asked her to stop sending things like that. She hung up. 15 minutes later, she posted a passive-aggressive message on her social media. An aunt sent me a screenshot. I blocked my sister-in-law on all platforms. I also blocked the niece. 2 days later, the school counselor called again. She told me she had met with my niece and my sister-in-law together. The niece admitted she was afraid of being replaced. She said she thought the gifts showed that the baby was more important. The counselor asked her to make a list of what a healthy bond with an uncle looked like. The niece wrote, taking her to school events, helping her with homework, attending her presentations. The counselor asked her to point out what she felt threatened by a newborn. The niece pointed to nothing. The counselor told me the niece cried when she realized the difference. Then the counselor asked them if they would attend a mediated meeting with us. My sister-in-law accepted in theory but wanted to hold it at her house. I said no. We agreed it would be at the school or a neutral office. 2 days before, my husband's mother asked to attend. On the day of the meeting, I fed the baby just before leaving. I put on a clean sweatshirt and we drove to the school. We went inside. My sister-in-law and niece were already there. The niece looked small in her chair. She had a spiral notebook on her lap and fidgeted with the edge of the pages. Her mother had her arms crossed. She stared at a fixed point on the wall. She didn't look at us or greet us. I spoke and explained what happened at the baby shower. I explained what happened at the hospital. My husband spoke afterward. He said he loved his niece, that love didn't disappear with the arrival of a baby, but he also said that didn't change our boundaries. The counselor looked at my niece. She looked at her notebook and said she had written something. She read it aloud. I won't put quotes, but the content was simple. She said she felt scared, that she thought breaking the gifts would make people less eager about the baby's arrival in their minds. She said she now understood how wrong she had been, that she was sorry for what she did to the gifts and the blanket, that she was sorry for going to the hospital, and asked if she could see the baby later. The counselor asked my sister-in-law to speak. She started with a long defense. The counselor interrupted her and asked her to talk about the future, not the past. My sister-in-law looked at her daughter, then at me. She said she had been wrong to minimize the damage, that she had been wrong to force a hospital visit, that she didn't agree with all our rules, but she would follow them if it meant being able to see the baby. That was all we were going to get. We agreed on a plan, a written apology from the niece to my husband and me for everything that happened. It had to come from her, not be written by her mother. An act of service from the niece chosen by me to compensate for the time I spent replacing things. I chose 2 tasks, sorting baby clothes by size and washing baby bottles, supervised only by my husband. A brief supervised visit in our living room after 2 weeks, with the niece sitting on the sofa and the baby on my lap, not holding her during that first visit. If it went well, we would plan a longer visit with more interaction. The counselor wrote everything down and we each signed it. The start date was the following Monday. Monday arrived. My husband picked up the niece after school and brought her home. She took off her shoes at the entrance, washed her hands without being asked. She kept her voice low, sat at the table, and waited while I finished feeding. Then I handed her a basket of clothes and a set of labels. She sorted from newborn to 3 months into neat piles. She matched socks, dried bottles. She asked where to put things and followed instructions. When the allotted time was up, she asked if I needed anything else. I said no, that was good. She looked at the bassinet for a long second, then looked away and left with my husband. She came 2 more times that week and 2 times the next. She was careful on each visit. She kept her distance from the bassinet. She never tried to touch the baby. She left a short note the second week. It said she was trying to do better and had been thinking about the blanket. She had asked her art teacher if there was any way to mount the damaged piece in a frame so it wouldn't fray further. She offered to pay for the frame with part of her allowance. At the end of the 2 weeks, we had the first supervised visit on the sofa. I sat on the sofa with a pillow on my lap. My husband sat between the niece and me. She had her hands on her knees. She looked at the baby and smiled. She whispered hello and then looked at me to see if it was okay. After 5 minutes, the baby became restless and I said, "Time." The niece got up, thanked me, and left. We did 2 more similar visits over the next 10 days. No problems. My sister-in-law wrote to my husband asking for a photo after the 3rd visit. He said no. The niece didn't mention the topic. Throughout this, my father-in-law brought the knitted blanket. She managed something very similar. The color wasn't perfect, but the pattern felt familiar in my hands. My mom cried when she saw it. I cried afterward in silence while the baby slept. I took the original damaged piece and made an appointment at a framing shop. They said they could mount it with a backing and prevent the threads from coming loose further. 2 days before the 3rd sofa visit, my sister-in-law tried one last move. She sent a long message to my husband asking for a family photo with the baby at a barbecue a friend was hosting. She called it neutral ground. My husband told her no. He told her we weren't available and wouldn't be for public events for a while. She sent 8 messages in a row. He didn't respond. The next sofa visit went well. In the end, I made a decision. I told the niece that we could schedule a small opportunity for her to hold the baby during the next visit if she wanted, with my husband sitting right next to her and me standing in front of them. She seemed to be holding back a smile. Then she stopped and said, "Thank you." We did that visit 4 days later. My husband placed the baby on the niece's lap. He kept both hands close to the baby without touching him. I stood in front of them. Last weekend, we hosted my parents and my husband's parents for a simple dinner. We set a rule for the night: no talking about my sister-in-law, nothing about the niece outside of specific plans. My father-in-law said the knitter had sent a surprise matching small hat. My sister-in-law is still angry. She's not invited to our house yet. She's not receiving photos of the baby. She's not in the group of people on my phone who receive updates. That's a direct consequence of her behavior, not her title. She knows the way. If she wants to change that, apologize to me and stop throwing tantrums. The baby is 6 weeks old now. He has a small dimple on his left cheek. He likes being swaddled, but with one arm out. He sleeps 2 hours straight at night, 3 if the room is cooler. He hates the first bottle we chose and prefers another brand we had to buy in an emergency at 2 a.m. Salt update 4. The previous update was quite, how should I put it, calm or nice if you will, but this one won't be as much. And this time it's not my niece's fault, but her mother's, who has been worse than before, though at least now without us as her target. Her husband is divorcing her, and the reason is that he can't stand her anymore. To start, he discovered that it was she who ordered her daughter to destroy the gifts. This isn't something the niece just said to blame her mother. My sister-in-law admitted it to her husband. He's also tired because she's unbearable because we haven't allowed her to see our son yet. And we won't because she was the one who sent her daughter to do what she did, plus other things like the hospital incident. Basically because she's jealous that we had a baby and she couldn't. Apparently she and her husband tried to have another child, but they couldn't. And my sister-in-law carries a great frustration because of that. My niece is doing well considering her parents are divorcing. She's attending therapy because it's not normal for your mother to manipulate you into doing all this. But at least she's behaving much better, especially now that she lives with her father since they moved out. Regarding custody, not only is the niece old enough to choose which parent to live with, but there's a possibility that my sister-in-law will have to pay child support. It's still early as they've been in their separation period and the papers were filed very recently, but it's likely that the divorce will be finalized in the coming months. As for me, I'm going to make this my last update. I think things have largely been resolved, and everything with the niece is much better. She has a good relationship with her uncle again, and the change she has shown since she distanced herself from her mother has been considerable. My baby is also doing very well, and we are now starting the period where he sleeps almost all night, so that's another victory. Edit. I just want to report what you asked about the divorce. It has already been granted, and the niece lives full-time with my brother-in-law, while my sister-in-law has been ordered to pay child support. My sister-in-law is not happy, but at least now she only rants against her parents or badmouths her ex, and we are no longer in the middle of it. Her parents at least have distanced themselves from her, and her husband is no longer married to her, so he doesn't care much because they don't even share custody.